December 7th, 1941, north of Oahu, Hawaii. The Pacific dawn is still gray, a thin band of light spreading over calm water. In the distance, 6 shadows move silently across the sea, massive steel islands bristling with antennas, cranes, and guns. On the decks of these giants, Japanese naval aviators crouch beside their machines. The Mitsubishi A6M0 fighters, Nakajima B5N torpedo bombers, and Aichi D3A dive bombers, their silver-gray fuselages reflecting the pale light of morning. The men's faces are expressionless beneath leather flight caps, but their gloved hands tremble slightly as they check their gear. Each pilot wears a white hachimaki headband marked with a red rising sun, a promise to return victorious or not at all. From the loudspeakers of the flagship Akagi, Admiral Chuichi Nagumo's voice rolls out, calm and ritualistic. The honor of the Empire rides with you. May the Emperor's fortune be with us all. Engines roar to life, one, then dozens, until the morning stillness shatters under a rolling thunder of propellers and exhaust. The carrier decks are alive now. Deck crews in colored vests signal frantically, guiding planes into position, wind whipping across the open decks. The first Zero surges forward, its wheels clattering on the metal deck, then lifting away into the air, vanishing into the mist. Then another, and another. Within minutes, the sky is filled with the rising song of aircraft engines. From the horizon, the Pacific glints like glass, perfectly still, giving no hint of what is about to come. For the Japanese pilots, the world below seems infinite, a flat, blue emptiness stretching forever. But hidden beyond that horizon, just a few hundred miles east, lies Pearl Harbor. And on its calm waters, the U.S. Pacific Fleet sleeps. 5 hours later, as the first wave of Japanese planes roars over Oahu, the pilots look down and see what they had only imagined, rows of American battleships anchored like steel monuments. The sight is overwhelming. Smoke rises instantly as bombs strike decks and torpedoes tear through hulls. The water erupts with flame. Yet, among the Japanese officers aboard the carriers, one thought takes hold. The Americans had not seen them coming. To them, this confirms a belief carried since the Meiji era, that Japan's mastery of surprise, precision, and spirit gives it dominance in the Pacific. But this illusion, this certainty of control, will not last long, because far across the same ocean, on a shipyard in California, American engineers are already preparing something the Japanese cannot imagine. A machine that will change the nature of naval war forever. A floating airfield. A fortress of steel that can move anywhere, launch anywhere, strike anywhere. An aircraft carrier. 6 months later, June 4th, 1942, Midway Atoll. The Pacific looks calm again, but the air is heavy with something that cannot be seen, anticipation, fear, and destiny. Aboard the Imperial Japanese Navy carrier Akagi, Commander Mitsuo Fuchida leans over a map table, his eyes tracing a chain of dots that mark American movements. Reports have come in. American ships have been spotted, but no battleships, no cruisers large enough to threaten Japan's fleet. He smirks. They are broken, he says to his staff. They will not fight. Minutes later, a lookout shouts from the mast. Planes coming from the east! The officers glance at one another. Impossible. The Americans have no carriers in this sector. They were all destroyed, or so Tokyo believes. But as the shadows on the horizon draw closer, engines whining higher and higher, Fuchida realizes with horror what he's seeing. The planes are rising from nowhere, not from land, not from island airfields, but from the ocean itself. Carriers, someone whispers. The Americans, they brought carriers. The next seconds are chaos. Dive bombers, Douglas SBD Dauntlesses, plummet from the clouds at near vertical angles, their wings screaming. Explosions ripple across the Akagi's deck, fuel lines erupting, ammunition igniting. Sailors scatter across the burning flight deck as fires roar down the corridors. The scene is madness, the sea itself now a launch pad for the enemy. As flames consume the Akagi, Fuchida watches the horizon through smoke. There, glinting in sunlight, the USS Enterprise and USS Yorktown cut through the water, their decks alive with aircraft taking off in perfect rhythm. The Americans have turned the Pacific into their own runway, and for the first time in the war, the Imperial Japanese Navy understands. The Americans are not just fighting on the ocean. They are the ocean. June 4th, 1942, Midway Atoll burns in the distance. The sky is alive with smoke trails, tracer fire, and falling aircraft. The sun, high above the Pacific, cuts through the haze in silver streaks, glinting off spinning wreckage and oil-slicked waves. Aboard the Japanese carrier Kaga, sailors run across the scorched deck, pulling fire hoses, dragging bomb carts, shouting over the roar of flames. The air smells of burnt rubber, gasoline, and salt. Somewhere deep below the deck, a siren wails, the signal to abandon ship. Commander Akeo Watanabe, one of the flight officers, leans over the railing, staring in disbelief. He can see them now, American dive bombers peeling out of the clouds one by one like hawks diving on prey. Their silhouettes flash against the sunlight, their bomb bays yawning open. The letters U.S. Navy just visible on their wings before the next blast of anti-aircraft fire obscures the view. Watanabe grips the railing until his gloves tear. They came from nowhere, he mutters. No land, no island, nothing but sea. To his right, a junior officer answers, voice shaking. The sea, sir. It's their airfield. The next explosion swallows the words. Below deck, panic has no hierarchy. Men scramble through corridors thick with black smoke, the ship's interior glowing orange from fire. Water floods the lower compartments. The Kaga lists starboard. Watanabe's boots slip on oil as he climbs toward daylight, the heat licking at his back. When he emerges onto the upper deck, he can see the entire carrier group, or what's left of it, aflame. The Akagi, Soryu, and Kaga, three of Japan's proudest ships, all mortally wounded, and far beyond, almost invisible through the heat distortion, the Americans advance in precise mechanical formation. The USS Enterprise, USS Hornet, and USS Yorktown move as one, like machines guided by a single will. Fighters take off every 90 seconds, the next squadron lining up before the previous has even cleared the deck. Their coordination is inhuman, industrial, the product of something far larger than the sailors or the captains commanding them. Watanabe stares at the line of ships through the smoke and realizes what every man on deck now feels in his gut. This isn't luck. It isn't chaos or chance. It's something terrifyingly deliberate, a system too vast to comprehend, too disciplined to stop. At that same moment, on the bridge of the USS Enterprise, the mood could not be more different. Captain George D. Murray stands at the forward window, binoculars pressed to his face, watching the rising plumes from the burning Japanese fleet. His ship trembles slightly as another Dauntless returns, tailhook catching the arrestor cable, the deck crew sprinting forward to refuel and reload. "Launch the next group," Murray orders. His voice is calm, steady, methodical. The men obey instantly, like clockwork. All around him, the bridge hums with mechanical rhythm. Telegraphs clanging, radios buzzing, pencils scratching across navigation charts. The officers move efficiently, without panic, each man knowing exactly what comes next. "Sir," a young ensign says, holding a report. "The Japanese carriers are on fire. 3 confirmed hits, possibly 4. Murray lowers his binoculars. For a brief second, the entire bridge falls silent. Then he nods once. "Good work, gentlemen. Maintain course. We're not finished yet. No celebration. No cheering. Just the continuation of the process, as if this victory is one of many to come." Back aboard the sinking Kaga, Watanabe watches as sailors jump into the oily sea. Planes, once symbols of Japan's dominance, now burn at awkward angles on the deck. The proud red circles of the rising sun, painted on every wing, flicker and curl away under flame. He thinks back to Pearl Harbor, to the roar of engines, the exhilaration of striking first, the faith that Japan's spirit would outmatch the Americans' machines. Now that faith has turned to disbelief, he looks toward the horizon again. Another formation of U.S. planes is rising, not from land, but from the sea itself, as though the ocean has decided to take sides. "They don't fight like us," he whispers. "They build faster than we can destroy." The words vanish in the wind. Somewhere nearby, ammunition cooks off in a thunderous blast, and the Kaga begins to slip beneath the waves. Watanabe closes his eyes as the deck tilts under his feet. The last thing he hears before diving into the water is the rhythmic hum of distant aircraft, a mechanical lullaby from a nation that has turned its factories into weapons, its oceans into runways. June 10th, 1942. San Diego Naval Air Station, California. The hangars roar with noise, drills, hammers, voices shouting over the metallic symphony of production. Rows of aircraft fuselages shining under floodlights stand like skeletons of a new species waiting to be born. Mechanics, engineers, and dockhands move through the chaos with practiced precision. Women in rolled-up sleeves rivet aluminum panels. Men in coveralls hoist engines with chain lifts. Cranes swing like metronomes overhead. Every 12 hours, another Douglas SBD Dauntless is ready for deployment. Every day, another Wildcat fighter is rolled onto the airstrip. There is no ceremony, no pause. The process is continuous. Assembly lines operating day and night, the war effort humming with a rhythm that feels alive. A journalist from Life magazine walks through the plant, notebook in hand. He pauses beside an engineer named Harold Jenkins, who wipes the sweat from his brow and gestures toward a row of freshly painted wings.
You know what the Japanese don't get?
Jenkins says, smiling faintly. They think we fight with courage. We don't. We fight with output. He taps the side of an aircraft with the butt of his wrench. Every bolt, every bearing, every machine here, it's another bullet in the gun. They'll run out of ships before we run out of steel. He laughs, but it isn't arrogance. It's inevitability. Thousands of miles away in the wreckage-strewn Pacific, that inevitability is being felt. July 1942. Rabaul Harbor, New Britain. The surviving Japanese sailors from Midway limp into port aboard destroyers blackened by smoke and salt. On the pier, Lieutenant Commander Kiyoshi Nagamura stands stiffly at attention as the wounded disembark. His face hardens when he sees the wreckage lashed to the deck, twisted metal that was once a Zero's fuselage, fragments of carrier aircraft scorched beyond recognition. He has read the reports from the surviving officers. 3 carriers gone, over 300 aircraft lost. But paper cannot prepare him for what he sees. He walks to the edge of the pier and stares out at the empty horizon. The Imperial Navy once ruled this ocean. Now it feels like it belongs to someone else. A sailor approaches him, salutes shakily. Sir, they came from the sea. Not from Midway, not from any island. From the ocean itself. It was as if the Americans built their own land beneath the waves. Nagamura doesn't respond. He looks down at the water lapping against the pier, dark, endless, cold, and feels something he has not felt since the war began, doubt. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, that same ocean hums with motion. Convoys of American ships cross the Pacific, endless lines of silhouettes moving west. Cargo ships, oil tankers, troop transports, and carriers. Each one a piece of a machine too vast for any single man to see. In the heart of that armada, aboard the USS Enterprise, sailors work without rest. Mechanics refuel planes, gunners clean barrels, pilots brief for the next strike. The decks gleam with order. It is not chaos. It is choreography. An ensign on the Enterprise writes home to his mother in Ohio. Mom, the ocean doesn't feel like water anymore. It feels like a factory floor. The waves are our conveyor belt, and the planes just keep rolling off it. August 1942. Back in Tokyo, the mood is shifting. Reports arrive from intelligence officers describing the American naval buildup, not a handful of carriers, but dozens in production. Shipyards in Newport News, Brooklyn, and San Francisco are turning out new hulls every month. Even the word factory no longer feels right. It's something bigger, an organism, a living system of steel and steam that feeds itself and multiplies. Admiral Yamamoto studies the reports in silence. The ash from his cigarette falls across the map of the Pacific, covering Japan's island bases in a fine gray dust. He whispers to no one in particular, "We were prepared to fight men. But we are fighting a nation of machines. The war has changed forever. The sea, once an open field of strategy and courage, has become a stage for mass production. And for every ship Japan sinks, the United States builds 2 more. For every squadron lost, another rises from the decks of a carrier before the sun sets." On the ocean, the Americans now move like a storm with no center, faceless, tireless, unending. In the words of a Japanese naval report filed months later, "We no longer fight against an enemy fleet. We fight against a factory without horizon. And beneath the roar of the Pacific wind, that machine keeps building." October 1942, the Solomon Islands. The jungle hums with insects, the air heavy with salt and decay. On a ridge above the coast, Lieutenant Taro Ishikawa of the Imperial Japanese Army kneels beside a field telescope, peering toward the distant horizon. He expects to see an empty sea, a blue void stretching unbroken to the east. Instead, he sees movement. At first, it looks like mirage, dots shimmering in the heat. Then the shapes sharpen. U.S. carrier planes, dozens of them, diving low, their engines humming in perfect synchrony. Behind them, plumes of smoke rise where American aircraft carriers cruise beyond the horizon, their decks lined with aircraft waiting to launch. Ishikawa lowers the telescope slowly. His sergeant beside him whispers, "They rise from the water itself." The men watch, spellbound and terrified. The Grumman F-4F Wildcats scream overhead, their machine guns flashing in the sun, strafing Japanese supply lines through the coconut groves. Trucks erupt in flame, palm trees fall like matchsticks. Ishikawa presses himself into the mud as fragments rain down. When the planes vanish into the distance, he looks back toward the ocean. It looks calm, almost serene, hiding the steel leviathans that gave birth to those planes. The sea, once Japan's protector, now belongs to someone else. Aboard one of those ships at the USS Hornet, life moves with the mechanical rhythm of a factory floor. Sailors refuel aircraft with assembly line precision. Ordnance crews load 500-pound bombs under the wings of waiting Dauntless dive bombers. And pilots gather for briefings in cramped ready rooms filled with cigarette smoke and static radio chatter. A petty officer yells over the roar of engines, 45 seconds between launches. No mistakes. The flight deck becomes a living conveyor belt. Chocks pulled, propellers spun, deck crews sprinting clear as each plane surges forward and vanishes into the humid air. It is chaos only in sound. In movement, it's perfection. To an observer from above, it might not look like war at all, but mass production, the same process that built America's cities now spilling into the Pacific. In Tokyo, word of the Solomon Islands fighting reaches the naval staff by telegram. Losses are staggering. Pilots are running out faster than replacements can be trained. Ships take months to repair, while American carriers, hit and damaged, return to combat in weeks. In the war room, Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto studies the latest aerial reconnaissance photos. He circles the shapes of new American carriers with a pencil, one after another, until the page looks infected with black marks. His officers shift nervously. "How many do they have now?" Yamamoto asks quietly. 8 confirmed, sir, a staff officer replies, and 6 more under construction. Yamamoto exhales, staring at the smoke curling from his cigarette. Impossible, he mutters. But deep down he knows it is not. He had seen America's factories once before the war, endless assembly lines, steel mills taller than battleships, cities powered by motion. He presses a hand to the map. We are still thinking in terms of men and ships, but they are thinking in terms of systems. By 1943, those systems reach full power. On the U.S. West Coast, the Kaiser shipyards in California launch a new escort carrier every 3 weeks. Planes arrive by rail, engines already tested, ready to fly from the decks the moment they touch water. At Pearl Harbor, the docks once scarred by flames now roar with renewed life. Mechanics work day and night under floodlights, overhauling damaged vessels faster than Japan can sink them. The tide has turned, not in a single battle, but in the simple arithmetic of production. For men like Lieutenant Ishikawa, the change is visible even from the front lines. By mid-1943, every battle feels the same. The sky fills with American aircraft hours before the first shells fall. The pattern never changes. Planes appear, vanish, then return again. Like a tide with engines, the soldiers whisper among themselves, half believing the Americans have found a way to conjure airplanes from the sea. They call it the black magic of the Yankees, but Ishikawa knows better. In a letter to his brother written on a scrap of map paper, he describes what he has seen. Their ships carry the sky with them. Wherever they go, the sky follows. We cannot fight such an enemy because they do not arrive. They emerge. By late 1943, the Imperial Navy begins to break apart. The old belief in destiny and spiritual strength fades beneath the weight of iron, oil, and numbers. The ocean that once isolated Japan now imprisons it, and everywhere the carriers go, they leave behind the same mark, a strip of calm sea where their planes rise, strike, and disappear again, as if the Pacific itself is manufacturing war. On the bridge of the USS Enterprise, Captain Murray watches the horizon as his pilots return from another raid. The setting sun glints across the water, reflecting off hundreds of silver wings gliding in formation back toward the carrier. To him, the sight is almost beautiful. Machines and men moving as one, powered by the endless rhythm of the nation behind them. He turns to his first officer and says quietly, "You can bomb a city, sink a fleet, but you can't stop a machine once it's started." Below them, sailors run to recover the landing planes, steam rising from the deck like breath. The sound of engines and wind blends with the pulse of the sea, a harmony of metal and motion. And far beyond the horizon, in Tokyo, the last men of the Imperial Navy begin to understand. The war is no longer between empires. It is between a world that builds and a world that cannot catch up.